Part 2. Only 22 minutes. Perfect.
Over anything in my life, as much as Jimmy is obsessed over FTV.
That ringing in the background.
I couldn't remember my own name with the clarity and precision that he has brought up FTV.
But let's talk about why.
No, we had such a good conversation. We were almost there.
This is what's so important.
But I'm telling you, that I initially did not care that much about this. My issue has been the way it's been used to cynically.
That's a little unfair, Vaush, because I've heard you criticize the strategy as not effective, not smart strategy, in ways that are completely undermined by what we saw happen with the conservatives 2 weeks ago.
Just to be clear to everyone, just so everyone remembers, force the vote isn't like a broader ideology or something. It's a strategy, not a very good one at that, but even leaving that aside, that literally only could have been a thing 2 years ago. They were wrong to begin with, or at the very least, they were unjustified in a lot of their statements. The specific force the vote movement was one of the most blatant grifts that got passed as left-leaning activism in the past several years. There was literally no history in which anyone but Nancy Pelosi became the Speaker of the House. There was no avenue for any other...
And I think that part of why some of us are frustrated and continue the conversation perhaps longer than you would like is because there's absolutely no acknowledgement of how many lies are being spread. Oh, Kevin McCarthy can become Speaker of the House. Oh, it won't work unless you have an alternative speaker in question. You know, you can't make X, Y, and Z kind of asks. These kind of asks are inappropriate, but they wouldn't suggest alternative asks that I think I and a lot of other people would have been down for. So, I mean, do you see now, post what the Republicans have done, do you think do you agree that it was a legitimate plan and one that the left probably should have engaged in 2 years ago?
I think it would have been fine to do from the get-go. I do think there's a difference.
Oh my god. And now he's okay with force the vote that quickly, Vaush? That's all it took to get you on board with it? Damn, I wonder, dude, how scary must it be when you got a 3-hour conversation slotted and in the first hour you realize you're like hopelessly fucking left behind. Oh my god. He should have faked an internet disconnect.
Difference in how the right and the left handle these situations. The right does not care about its rabble-rousers, you know. The louder and more obnoxious you are as a conservative politician, the more your voters love it. They don't care. Whereas, of course, if AOC so much as coughs, over Nancy Pelosi, you're going to get like a 68-hour MSNBC, a runtime on how disrespectful she's being.
But didn't that happen to the Republicans too? Fox News was not on board with this project. There's a more ideological diversity over there, but the media was against them.
Though. The media was, the institution of the GOP was, but I feel like the populists on the right, I say populists here very loosely, they're not really populists, they're just more openly fascist. I feel like they're usually...
Aren't fascists? Is fascism a type of populism? Populism is not fascism. Right-wing populism is a symptom of democracy in trouble. Populism is an authoritarian form of democracy. Authoritarian populists and fascist politics both combine charismatic leaders. I feel like fascism is like a type of extreme populism, but I don't know.
Able to get more out.
I don't think Vaush is scared on that convo. I think he's just really desperate to get on our good side because he has no streamer friends. I almost feel bad for him, but I also kind of don't. He fucked himself hard. Like, his whole Fortress arc, I think Vaush's big problem is you need somebody to collaborate with. Like, even for me, that's why I tell my orbiters, like, jump in if you guys want to chat so that I can systemically abuse you and then have you spin off and make Mr. Girl things. I feel like you need people, like, to chat with and hang out with and have fun with that are, like, normal fucking human beings that are, like, fun to hang out with. And I feel like Vaush, I don't know if he has anybody. Like, who the fuck is in his corner? Demon Mama? When you aggressively purity test the fuck out of everybody and then you have no friends left, like, yeah, your takes are going to get dumber. You're going to get dumber. You don't have, like, any fun doing anything. Like, everything's just fucked at that point. I'm curious to know why you think Vaush doesn't prepare for these conversation debates. Is it a matter of hubris? I think it's hubris. No, I don't think it's hubris, actually. I I think it's lack of passion, and I think it's laziness. I think that's the issue. Because when we did our duo debates together, I think he was pretty keen on preparing, but it's probably because I'm a fun person to do stuff with, and it's fun to like be competitive with me, and it's fun to like look good next to me. I think that I think, especially because I'm so arrogant, or like I have a lot of hubris and shit, so I'll bring that out of somebody. Like I don't think you want to be in a debate next to me and like look bad, because I'm an annoying fucking person to look worse than, right? Because it's just, you just don't want that to happen. So I think I can bring that out in some people. Whereas like Vaush does everything on his own now, and then he talks to, again, like who, like Doe and Demon Mama and shit. Like I don't know. It's just his existence seems like very lonely and sad and hollow right now. Like, you know,
out of their party because the corporate GOP doesn't fear them as much. Like I said before, because they don't really challenge capital. But you said earlier,
I don't think there's a difference. I think the point is that the people on the left would have rallied behind a just claim by people like AOC or other progressives. You got to pick the ask right. You got to make sure it's not this self-interested stuff, and that they're fighting for things that are very popular in the public, including among conservatives, things like $15 minimum wage and healthcare and yada yada yada.
I think there could have been good asks there. The main efficacy point that I made that really bugged me was when people were saying the FTV could have been used to do like a roll call vote on Medicare for all that everyone knows wouldn't have passed and would have been nothing more than an empty virtue signal.
If you don't like that
but
ask,
if it's
then
committee appointments, then you know.
If you don't like that ask, you don't have to like that ask. But also, these aren't mutually exclusive. So let them do their roll call vote. Also demand committee appointments. You could demand the earth, the wind, and the sky. It doesn't matter, because until you vote for, until those 4 women or whomever in the squad vote for Nancy Pelosi, her ass wasn't becoming Speaker of the House, and that was an incredible amount of power to squander.
It does matter, because if they're too obnoxious, it ends up being an optical loss. But yes, I agree they could have done more with that.
No, but the point that we were making, though, is that even though there was an optical loss on the right, no, this is important. Even though Fox News was not on board with this, the Republican Party was...
Vaush, notice how the difference in strategy here, and Brianna's good at this. When she has a point that she feels like she's won on, she really wants you to feel that loss. She wants to establish it, and she like Vaush, because he's not as prepared, Vaush is kind of content to walk away like, yeah, okay, you know, we kind of agree to disagree, and then kind of like walk away from it. And she wants to bring him back every time, like, well, no, hold on, no, you're wrong, and I'm right, and you're wrong, and I am right, okay, right? She wants to keep bringing him back because, yeah, he's trying to like slip by a little bit.
Wasn't on board with this. The people, conservatives, loved this. And you said that the conservative, they like the conservative voter loves rabble rouser more than Democratic voter. I don't think that that's true. I think that there would be a lot of excitement and energy among the people if you saw someone actually fighting for you in Congress. Why do I believe that? Because that's the entire repeal of Bernie Sanders in 2016.
But they voted for Biden, the least rabble-rousing human.
Yeah, for the reasons that you just described. You know perfectly well why they voted for Biden.
Because Democrats are cocked, because they're small-brained bitch baby liberals who wouldn't get out of bed each morning if they weren't told to the previous day by MSNBC.
Who else were they supposed to vote for? Vaush? Bernie dropped out and immediately endorsed Biden, so Biden was the candidate.
Biden was the person that they sort of cajoled behind institutional support for in the primaries.
So who were they supposed to rabble rouse behind? Well, there was nobody. That's my point. There's never anybody to rabble rouse.
But that's my point. In the primaries,
Democrats don't do it.
In the 2016 primaries, Donald Trump came in the maverick or whatever, the underdog, and then he screamed and shouted and insulted people all the way up to the top. Republicans love that stuff. It's gladiator sports to them. I respect it, frankly. It's better than what we have. Unfortunately, the average conservative is stronger emotionally than the average liberal when it comes to their propensity for watching politicians duke it out. So I genuinely think...
That's the claim that I'm disagreeing with right there.
Really? You think liberals are better at that?
I think that there is an appetite for seeing people within the Democratic Party fight for the interests of working people among Democrats, just like there is among Republicans. However, you never get to see a test.
I think a difference we see here too, and this might come down to kind of like media training, is when Brianna says something, it seems like she generally wants to root it in something that's like some kind of fact or some example, like, oh, like Democrats want to do this because of that, or oh, there were the Democrats had 4 people in the House who could have done this. Whereas Vaush kind of comes from more like an internet debate background, where it's like being like, whoa, really? I wish that was the case. Whoa, really? Like, he doesn't really have much of substance to contribute, but he'll do these like exclamations. But then Brianna's obviously not content to listen to him do that. She's like, well, wait, hold on, you need to justify that. You need to say something more. We need to like do something more. He just tried it here.
And it's never really encouraged, because the Democratic Party, you saw this with the Force the Vote moment last week. The Democratic Party prides itself on solidarity behind people as evil as Hakeem Jeffries, who spent the last 2 years trying to pass law, not like laws, but rules within the Democratic Party that would keep progressives out of office, raising money with Josh Gottheimer and Terry Sewell,
more examples,
and a super PAC to try to keep more progressives from getting into Congress, blacklisting vendors who had the audacity to set up lights for or cater a progressive candidates trying to get into Congress.
They don't give a shit. He's civil. He's got a smile.
Exactly. And despite him doing all of that, all the people that he's attacked for the last 2 to 4 years or whenever this progressive thing started in 2018, clapped for him, cheered him on as an amazing poet as he did that corny acrostic, took selfies, championing how much they were all in line behind Hakeem Jeffries. And to me, that's the most dangerous thing. As a leftist right now, that is the exact kind of solidarity that I feel like is our job to be breaking up and attacking. And I don't think it causes Republicans to win by asking the left to fight as hard as the right is going to fight.
If it doesn't in any way assist the Republicans, then I support it. I will say I have some trepidation. No. I swear to God, my issue was mostly with how it was handled. Principally, the idea of extracting concessions or at least arguing over committee appointments, I'm okay with. The problem that I have is that there are a lot of people on the social media space who have very cynically used it as a flux point to attack the squad and define their entire identity by being the left, but not like that. And then they go on and spend like their entire lives, therefore, being the left who's anti this. No. We know this is
I just have to say that I disagree, but go ahead. I don't think that's a fair criticism, but go ahead.
Okay, well, it's a tendency that many have claimed has happened. Anyway, I have an issue with how it's been used. I don't think the squad's perfect. I think they've made plenty of mistakes. I mean, God, that AOC, I don't know what kind of toenail screwing Pelosi was doing behind the scenes. That vote on the Iron Dome shit, you remember that? Yeah.
I just did a radar on it, in fact.
Yeah,
I mean, I know that people only want to talk about my radars that they find to be fascistic or whatever, but I spend most of my time advocating for things like Medicare for all and wealth taxes and calling out. I said, in that radar, I explained that AOC could have taken that moment and come forward and exposed whatever arm twisting is going on behind the scenes, whatever kind of corporate, regressive, pernicious pressure that people like Nancy Pelosi are wielding behind the scenes. Instead, she continues to tacitly, I'm not saying it's evil in her heart, but she is in effect covering for Nancy Pelosi and the establishment when she does her bidding without simply outing what made her cry on the House floor that day.
No, I agree, especially because she's in such a safe district. You know, they would have to twist some major strings to have even a chance of getting her not
and AOC was, I'm sure you saw the AOC clip on her Instagram the other day after the whole force the vote Republican thing, where she says she's criticizing.
Will Destiny ever be able to debate lefties like BJG ever again, or have they all blocked him? Politically, this is not an entertaining, it's not an interesting area for me to explore because all of these ideas are so fringe and niche and disconnected from what 90% of Americans want to care about. I don't care. I'm happy that I broke free from this horrible fucking sludge of shitty debate topics. I don't want to go back to this. If I do, it's because I've made a mistake.
Marjorie Taylor Greene saying Marjorie Taylor Greene was in a, oh sorry, she couldn't say anything. Lauren Boebert saying Lauren Boebert was in a, almost lost her seat, and somehow that is why it's good for me not to have done force the vote. But it's like, no, it's the opposite. Marjorie Taylor Greene almost lost her seat and was still willing to go up against the Republican establishment for dumb stuff, to be clear, but was still willing to take on that risk when you're in a safe seat and aren't willing to stick your neck out for anything. I mean, that's the whole problem. Go ahead.
The main point that I'll front here, and something I'm really interested in seeing, is what would happen if you had a lefty, or at least a populist, in the Democratic Party who was openly antagonistic to the machinations within the party. You know,
that's what we want to see.
Bernie Sanders was a real nice guy. I love him. AOC, the rest of the squad, they're clearly keeping quiet to an extent. I'm sure, now this is just standard politics, right? Like every political party to some extent has to twist people's arms behind the scenes. That's literally the point of a political party. It makes sense. But obviously this is going beyond like standard, like grouping people together, and it's gone into more extensive, like ideological constraints. Mm-hmm. I would love to see.
I also feel like there's an issue where, I don't know if the audience gets this or not, or only I do, because my brain is so fucking huge and wrinkly and massive. But like, I want you to know this is very difficult for me because I hate Brianna, okay? I do not like this person. I think she's a fucking cancer on politics, okay? But when she speaks, She's very clear. She's very concise. She's communicating important information with commendable brevity. And then Vaush talks, and he's like, I understand that it's a necessity that the inner machinations of a political party thus must force the hand-wringing of its members such that they engage in political activity that's necessary for the construction of the political parties to function in the way that is thus necessary for... It's like, what are you fucking saying? You've said nothing. What do you even... Like, just listen to, like, what he's... Like, it was just, like, a whole statement that, like, you could have just said, like, yeah, I know some hand-wringing is necessary in politics, but...
Squad, their Anders was a real nice guy. I love him. AOC, the rest of the squad, they're...
Yeah, it might be, too, because she's fucking... Again, she's out here like, oh, I can't afford my student loans, but she's a fucking Harvard Law graduate, okay? Brianna's not stupid. Again, I'll say that for the millionth time. She's not stupid.
Clearly keeping quiet to an extent. I'm sure, now this is just standard politics, right? Like, every political party to some extent has to twist people's arms behind the scenes. That's literally the point of a political party. It makes sense. But obviously, this is going beyond, like, standard, you know, like, grouping people together, and it's gone into more extensive, like, ideological constraints. Mm-hmm. I would love to see what would happen, like what media cycle would come about from AOC just, I don't know, waking up on the wrong side of the bed and going, hey, okay, fuck it, sure, fine. I'll go on Insta, we'll talk about this the whole day, you know, I'll throw a fuss. I'd be happy to see that. My current belief is that the average Democrat is a bitch baby who would respond poorly.
We've already covered this ground, Vaush. You're retreading the same shit. You're acting like you're on stream, just talking to your chat.
To any kind of disruption within the party, no matter how well handled by the left. But
I think that's true.
If that was challenged, if it was improved, if I could believe there was a positive outcome, because that's what I'm in it for.
Utilitarianism.
The left can try at whatever they want, you know, but if at the end of the day it doesn't do anything, I just don't care. If it turns out something good can come of it, or if it opens up a road to something good in the future, then I might be a little bit more...
Isn't it hard? Isn't there something kind of, in the aggregate, self-defeating? Isn't there something very limiting about saying, I'm only supportive of taking that kind of a political risk if I can guarantee that there's a positive outcome? Look, I completely get wanting to calculate that there's a likelihood, maybe, of a positive outcome, but this is, I think, where people like Jimmy Dore, I'm sorry, are coming from. I didn't say it. Jimmy didn't say it. AOC said that she'd rather be a one-term congressperson than abandon her ideals and stop fighting for the things that she thought was so important. AOC positioned herself as someone, and Kyle Kalinske says this all the time. He's there. He's part of the Justice Democrat effort, that brave new, whatever, that got them all elected. So if he says the point of why we fought for them to get into Congress was for them to do exactly that. So for them to not then be doing that, honestly, they should be doing that regardless of whether or not there's a positive outcome. I mean, they should obviously be trying for a positive outcome, not just randomly throwing rocks. It would
help if they'd give it a shot, you know.
Right, but like, and this is, so again, I don't necessarily, I don't necessarily obviously take the
You're calling me a cuck again.
How am I doing that?
No, I'm just because, like, you're not willing to take a risk. I do get it.
What? She should have let that hang.
And I don't necessarily, I don't necessarily obviously take the
You're calling me a cuck again.
How am I doing that?
No, I'm just because, like, you're not willing to take a risk. I do get it, by the way. I'd be much more open to experimentation if I wasn't so concerned about the, I don't know, the death camps or whatever.
So, but
broadly, I agree that it's you need to experiment to some extent because there's no safe way forward.
This is what is so frustrating. I feel like I'll just speak for myself and not other members of my side of the left. I feel like I have gone out of my way as someone who was, especially 2 years ago, very timid in this space, not someone who has a long history in politics, willing to defer to the opinions of a lot of other people. I've spent 2 years having union organizers and journalists and elected officials and historians and novelists and musicians and old people, young people, everyone in the world on my show trying to vet these ideas. I'm not someone who's just like, oh, I think I know the right thing to do. I have instincts. I have good, what I think are above average analytical skills, but I don't know the right answers to things. But after talking to person after person after person, it's what it seems to me to be the problem is that there's a crisis on the left where nobody is willing to do anything unless it's a guaranteed success for some of the reasons that you articulated. So I have gone out of my way, I believe, to try to focus on opportunities that would not cost the broad left anything. That's why force the vote was so crucial. Because whereas sometimes you hear liberals arguing, you hear Democrats arguing, well, and AOC argued this in her little clip recently. Sorry, that was patronizing. AOC argued this in her clip recently. I'm sorry. I don't mean to. I'm sorry.
In her little clip.
She said, you know, Republicans, it's easy for them to hold stuff up because they don't want to get anything done anyway. But Democrats want the legislation to pass, so we can't force it, you know, we can't hold folks hostage in the same way. Now, me, I'm the one who would abolish the FBI, so I would burn it. I would take the risk and burn it out. But even if you're not me, and I respect that most people aren't, force the vote. The only negative thing that was on the line, the only downside, was that some broad named Nancy Pelosi doesn't get to be Speaker of the House. There were no children who weren't going to get their welfare checks. You know, no one was going to go hungry. Nobody was going to be evicted. You know, it was just Nancy Pelosi, one of the richest women in America, not getting to hold the gavel for the 15th year, however long she's been Speaker of the House.
Do you have a problem with women in power?
When they're named Nancy Pelosi, yes, 100%. So do you see what I mean? And my same thing with the 2020 stuff. It's like, fine. You don't want to vote third party? Fine. Then at very least, can we like be cool? Like, can we try to bluff a little bit and try to get a little something for our votes before you bend the knee for Joe Biden? Bernie dropped out in April. The election's in November. Can we wait till like July before we all pledge fidelity to Biden for the rest of our lives?
Look, we all have angles we approach this from. For me, and again, you know,
Good point, Vaush.
I could go on about this, but I feel like the battle for this country's longevity in terms of its democratic institutions is being lost or is lost. And it's really just a matter of time. And I don't think the Democrats have the wherewithal or the lefties the strength to do anything sufficient to keep that from happening. And my hope is that whatever.
Why does she think the Republicans' own force vote a few weeks ago was a success? Weren't they an embarrassment? I'm not. Somebody told me. Was it ruminate? What did he say? Somebody said that some of the Republicans got concessions out of other Republicans. Did they? I don't know if that's true or not. I didn't follow the aftermath of that as much to see if they actually did manage to pull any worthwhile concessions out doing that. So if they did, then maybe it was worth it. But I don't know if they did or not.
Happens as a product of that. You know, you'll see this reciprocal blowback against a conservative ideology that would give us the venue for broader change. So, for example, and you know, I'm gonna not Godwin's law for once. You know, we've seen historically a resurgence in some Latin American countries after U.S.-backed fascist dictators were finally ousted or democratically removed. Right. Chile has seen a pretty dramatic leftward shift over time. Lula has, you know, been a international hero in Brazil, albeit, you know, one with some challenges, but we love him anyway. Even right now with Ukraine, ever since the Euromaidan in 2014, the country has moved leftward, in large part because they wanted to distinguish themselves from Russia, which is a more conservative country. I think that the voters have a short memory and generally aren't that bright, which is unfortunately a product of our lacking political education. And they tend to react very reflexively to the pressures they see in their time. And my hope is that whatever happens next with the conservatives, the goal will be to milk that politically all the way home.
Milk it.
And you use that to build a strong left base. What the Democrats didn't do in 2020, of course, was sufficiently work with the Jan 6 stuff, right? I mean, look at what Lula is doing over in Brazil. They're Bolsonaristas. They invade the 3 houses of the federal government. Immediately, they are arrested. Lula goes on TV. He talks about how they are terrorists, how they are cowards. He says the police were complicit in the insurrection attempt, which is phenomenal. And he says he's going to make an example of them. Fantastic stuff. I mean, this, I think, will really bolster his support in the long run. It's a strong response. Jan 6 happens, the Democrats limp-wristedly just sort of, I mean, what happened? Nothing has happened. Nothing has happened to anyone. Part of this is
well, I mean, Donald Trump was impeached. There have been convictions for some of the rioters and the planners. I mean, what else were they supposed to do, my friend? What do you mean? He's being fairly biased. Lula did not go balls to the wall like he's saying. Yeah, do we need to bring back the guillotine?
consequence, I think, of our, highly federated system, but also I think
well,
the Democrats...
they voted to increase police funding.
Right, we got more Capitol Police. There we go. God bless. We're safe forevermore. The point I'm getting at here.
God, I hate her. Oh, I hate her so much. And Vaush is here cucking out actually the entire time.
Here is just, I think you work with these like critical moments, and we don't have one right now because you kind of need a central point. You need a leader or an event you can orient it around. Bernie is out at the moment.
You gotta make one, Vaush.
No, well, you
gotta make one.
You make one, or you respond to an existing one, and that takes time and effort. And I support efforts to build that, but we need to be respectful of our place in history, because if we try to overplay our hand, we have to. If we overplay our hand,
what's the line between being respectful of our place in history
and being a cuck? And being a cuck, say
abdicating one's responsibility.
That's just saying being a cuck in more words.
To make change happen.
Is
it God helps those who helps themselves, or is it we're sitting around waiting for a miracle?
No, you always be active, but you have to be active in the right direction. I'm very defensively oriented at the moment.
Well, that's the thing.
Not mind you by choice. I'm
sorry, but that's why force the vote is an issue. Because we don't get many opportunities, and that was one. And half the left chose to bury it.
But this is what I mean with it keep coming up, because that was years ago now, and I'm here today.
No, it was 10 days ago that we had a validation.
That was their force to vote,
right,
not
but
ours.
It's front of mind, and it happens again and again. I can go through a bunch of other examples. I don't want to bore people in this podcast because I just did this in the last episode. But the silence on Pramila Jayapal whipping progressives not to hold up the spring of 2021 COVID relief bill over the extraction of a $15 minimum wage out of it by Chuck Schumer.
Too abstract for the average voter, but I agree in principle. The average voter, we're talking fish IQ here. We got to rattle their little goldfish bowls. We got to shake them up,
I think that we obviously disagree about this. I think that we coddle the public. I think that we patronize the public. I think that we don't respect our voters. I think the voters know that they should deserve a $15 minimum wage. I think that they can understand the parliamentarian is a position that is not elected. They can be fired. Their advice can be ignored. And the Democratic Party chose to turn a 50-vote situation to a 60-vote situation so they wouldn't have to pass a $15 minimum wage.
20% of voting Americans at most know what the filibuster is. 5% the parliamentarian.
And whose fault is that?
Oh, no, I agree. I'm just saying, working with the environment we're in right now, it's pretty tough to sell them on the nuances.
But Vaush, if people never make that argument, that remains the case forever.
No, but
Republicans have all become experts on the IRS in the last 2 weeks because Republicans decided to make it their issue.
Again, the political education here is lacking severely. And this is one of the big issues I have with Biden. Actually, it's the main issue. God's honest truth. I don't give a damn about all the bad policy or whatever. I expected this from him. I expected him to be bad. I don't really care. He's been marginally better than I expected, which was bad. Great. The main thing that bothers me is that the Democratic Party is voiceless, utterly silent. Every moment of every day, if you, as a Republican voter, want to hear what the news is on your party or what thing you should be angry about or which minority group you think is ruining America, you can go on...
Which color M&M?
Which color M&M is ruining America? Which color M&M is grooming your children into being transgender? You can go on any number of sites or talk to any number of people or look at any number of politicians, and they are keeping you up to date. For Democrats, this isn't the case. AOC does better than most with the Insta feed stuff.
Sure.
But even that's like the bar, right? The fact that Biden is virtually silent means that there isn't a unifying voice like we had back with Bernie for a long time. Sure. He's just too old.
Is Biden silent?
But that's what I mean about creating these moments. It's not about being passive or anything. It's just I feel like we're in a really rough position right now.
So I agree, but I just want to. I know this seems like such a small point, Vaush, but when I just said the thing about a $15 minimum wage, fighting over that, or fighting over the bifurcation of the Build Back Better bill or whatever, your instinct was to say, okay, but the voters aren't going to understand it anyway.
The specifics of that situation are a bit...
So you say the voters aren't going to understand it anyway. I say, well, that's part of the project that's the politician's job, is to make them understand it and to bring these kinds of things up regularly enough so they get to understand them. And you seem to agree with that. But in effect, I would just put to you, humbly, I would put to you that the effect of constantly pivoting to, well, no one's going to do it, it comes off as an excuse for why people shouldn't act. And over again, I've noticed on the left that there is this energy that says, well, things aren't going to work, or things are going to be hard, or the first time we try this, it's not going to work. So we shouldn't do it anyway. That ultimately serves to absolve the few kind of progressive people we have in Congress of doing anything at all. And I think has the effect of stymieing movement energy.
Okay, I don't disagree with that.
Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Just a reminder that this is a podcast. You can catch an extra premium episode every Monday.
God, Vaush got so cocked. Has Vaush not made a single good point? No, he's like talking around in circles. I think Vaush is like, I wish there was a better term than verbal IQ, because it sounds like such a cuck fucking statement. But Vaush is good at speaking. So when he's talking to people that are bad at speaking, he can talk around them for a long time. Like unironically debate bro, right? Unironically. But when he's confronted with somebody that actually knows what they're talking about, he just crumbles because he can't rely on his normal kind of like tricks, like just speaking well, to kind of carry him through a conversation. It's just it's not enough. But God, it's so fucking cringe. Pink signal. Am I getting that? Nope.